The Galactic Council was the center of power in the universe. Hundreds of alien species gathered there, discussing laws, wars, and politics. The Zorveth Dominion, the most powerful empire, always had the loudest voice. Their leader, High Commander Xylox, sat in his golden throne, surrounded by warriors with sharp claws and glowing red eyes. Today, the meeting was about a tiny, weak species from a blue planet, humans. The Earthlings want a seat in the council. Xylox laughed, his sharp teeth shining. What can they offer? They are fragile, slow, and their technology is primitive. They are nothing but children playing with fire. Laughter filled the grand hall. The reptilian Draxians, the insect-like Kryn, and the machine-based Varkos all joined in. To them, humanity was nothing. A species barely out of its own solar system, begging for recognition. A human representative stood among them. Ambassador James Carter. He was an older man, calm and serious. He listened to the insults without reacting. When the laughter died down, he spoke. Humans are not asking for charity. We are asking for a fair chance. Xylox smirked. A fair chance. Against us, the great empires of the galaxy. We have survived on Earth for thousands of years, Carter said. We have fought wars, conquered diseases, and pushed our limits beyond imagination. We may not be as advanced as you, but we learn fast. Underestimate us, and you will regret it. Silence followed. Then more laughter. You think you can fight us? A Kryn general hissed. Your ships are weak. Your soldiers are soft. Even your bodies are too delicate. A single strike from our weapons would shatter your bones. Carter remained calm. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small tablet. With a few taps, a hologram appeared. It showed Earth's history, wars, battles, revolutions, from ancient sword fights to nuclear explosions, from guerrilla warfare to space missions. The aliens watched in amusement at first, but as the images continued, their expressions changed. They saw cities reduced to ash, soldiers fighting in trenches, armies marching across continents. They saw humans adapting, turning every disaster into an opportunity to grow stronger. But the aliens still didn't take it seriously. This is your history. Xylox chuckled. How? Violent. But these wars were against your own kind. Fighting each other is easy. Fighting us? Impossible. Carter sighed. We were divided then. We are united now. Xylox leaned forward, his red eyes gleaming. Then prove it. In 1 week, the Zorveth Dominion will engage in battle against the rebel forces on the planet Vecta-9. If your humans are as strong as you claim, send a fleet. Show us your strength. Carter smiled slightly. We accept. The room erupted in laughter again. The idea of human fleets fighting in a real galactic battle was ridiculous. They were sending sheep to wolves. As Carter left the hall, a Kryn general whispered, "They won't last a day." But Carter only smiled. They have no idea what's coming. The Zorveth Dominion prepared for battle with complete confidence. Their warships, black and red like hunting beasts, moved toward Vecta-9, a planet torn by rebellion. The Zorveth had crushed thousands of enemies before, and they would do it again. General Xylox watched from his command ship, amused. The humans actually sent a fleet, he asked, laughing. His officers nodded, equally entertained. They sent only 12 ships, one of them reported. 12. Xylox chuckled. How generous of them. We should thank them for bringing us new scrap metal. The human fleet approached the battlefield. Unlike the massive Zorveth warships, human ships looked small, almost fragile. Their design was simple, lacking the sharp armor of the Zorveth destroyers or the glowing energy cores of the Kryn battleships. The rebel forces on the planet sent out a desperate message. Humans, retreat. You don't understand what you're facing. The Zorveth fleet is too powerful. The reply from the human commander was calm. We understand perfectly. The battle began. The Zorveth fleet launched the first strike. firing plasma cannons that could melt through asteroids. The human fleet did not return fire. Instead, they moved. Fast. Too fast. Psylocke frowned as he watched the screens. Why are they not attacking? The human ships weaved between the plasma blasts with impossible precision. They moved like shadows, slipping through the gaps between enemy fire. The Zorvath ships tried to lock onto them, but the targeting system struggled. Impossible, one officer muttered. They're dodging? No one dodged in space battles. It was a game of power. Who had the strongest shields, the biggest cannons. But the humans weren't playing that game. They were playing their own. Then, without warning, the human fleet attacked, but not with overwhelming force. Instead of firing at the Zorvath battleships directly, they targeted specific points. Weak spots in the shields, exposed cooling vents, weapon charge ports. Their attacks were precise, like surgeons cutting into a body. One by one, Zorvath ships began to malfunction. Cannons overheated, shields collapsed, engines failed. Psylocke stood up in his chair. How? How are they doing this? A technician frantically analyzed the battle. General, they're using electronic warfare. Their ships are interfering with our systems. They're not just attacking us. They're disabling us. It was unthinkable. Zorvath battle strategy was built on brute force, overwhelming firepower. They had never fought an enemy that used tactics instead of raw strength. The rebel forces on Vecta 9, who had been prepared to die, now saw something they had never expected. The mighty Zorvath fleet was falling apart. A rebel commander whispered in disbelief. The humans are winning. Panic spread through the Zorvath ranks. Their ships, once terrifying predators, were now confused and disoriented. And then, the worst happened. The humans had been holding back. A single command was sent from the lead human ship. Phase 2. The small, fast human ships suddenly unleashed their real weapons, high-speed kinetic rounds that punched through Zorvath armor like paper, hacking programs that turned enemy ships against each other, and drones that swarmed like hornets, targeting every exposed system. The Zorvath fleet collapsed. On his command ship, Psylocke could only watch in horror. His once invincible forces were burning, disabled, retreating. He clenched his fists. This isn't possible. This isn't how war is fought. On the other side of the battlefield, the human commander calmly observed the chaos. He opened a communication channel to Psylocke. The screen flickered, and a human face appeared. It was an older man with a steady, unreadable expression. General Psylocke, the human said, you laughed at us. You thought we were weak. Psylocke growled but said nothing. The human leaned slightly forward. You were wrong. Then the signal cut off, and the Zorvath Dominion, for the first time in history, ran. Psylocke sat in the War Council chamber, his claws tapping against the metal table. The room was silent. His commanders, once full of arrogance and confidence, now avoided his gaze. The Battle of Vecta 9 was supposed to be a simple show of power. Instead, it had become a humiliation. Across the galaxy, news spread fast. The humans had won. It wasn't just that they had won. It was how they had done it. They had turned the rules of war upside down. The Zorvath, who had dominated through sheer strength, were outmaneuvered, outthought, and outclassed. Psylocke slammed his fist on the table, the sound echoing through the chamber. They embarrassed us, he growled. The Dominion's name has been stained. One of his commanders, a cautious officer named Korek, cleared his throat. The humans fought differently than we expected. Their tactics. They cheated. Psylocke interrupted. They refused to fight like warriors. They used tricks, technology, and cowards' tactics. Korek hesitated but then spoke carefully. Perhaps, General, that is their strength. The room went silent again. Psylocke narrowed his eyes. What do you suggest? Korek glanced at the others before answering. We set a trap. The humans believe they have won, but they do not know true war. We will lure them into a battle they cannot escape. We will surround them, cut off their strategies, and crush them. Psylocke considered this. And where would we do this? The Rivok Nebula, Korak said. It is a dead zone for long-range sensors. They won't be able to see the full scale of our fleet until it's too late. Psylocke's sharp teeth formed a grin. Good. This time, we will show them the true power of the Dominion. The human fleet received the challenge just days later. A distress signal had been sent from the Rivok Nebula. According to intercepted messages, a small Zorvath outpost was under attack from an unknown enemy. The humans had gained a reputation as protectors of the weak, and the message was meant to bait them in. But the humans were not fools. On board the Horizon, Admiral Elias Monroe studied the report. He was an experienced officer, one of Earth's finest strategists. He had seen war, both on Earth and beyond, and he knew a trap when he saw one. "This is too convenient," Monroe muttered. "A Zorvath distress call, right after we humiliated them. No, this isn't real. This is a setup." His officers nodded in agreement, but one of them, a young intelligence analyst named Maya Wren, leaned forward. "If it's a trap, maybe we can turn it against them." Monroe looked at her, intrigued. "Go on." Maya pulled up a holographic map of the Rivok Nebula. The nebula affects long-range sensors, but that works both ways. If the Zorvath are hiding their fleet, they won't be able to see our full movements either. We could go in with a small force and make them believe they have the advantage. Monroe's eyes gleamed with interest. And then, once they commit to the battle, we bring in the rest of our fleet from an unexpected angle. Maya continued. They will think we are trapped, but in reality, they will be the ones surrounded. A slow smile spread across Monroe's face. "I like the way you think." In the depths of the Rivok Nebula, the Zorvath fleet waited, hidden among the swirling cosmic dust. Psylocke stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching the scanners. Then, a signal came through. "The humans have arrived." The Zorvath officers grinned. The bait had worked. "Deploy the fleet," Psylocke ordered. "Cut off their escape routes. Make them suffer." Zorvath warships emerged from the shadows, engines roaring to life. Plasma cannons charged, missile systems locked on. The humans had walked right into their trap. Psylocke leaned forward. Fire. A barrage of energy blasts surged toward the human ships. Explosions lit up the nebula as some of the smaller ships took direct hits. The humans tried to maneuver, but the Zorvath had them completely surrounded. On the horizon, Monroe remained calm. He watched the chaos unfold, then gave a simple command. "Now." Suddenly, new signals appeared on the battlefield. Dozens of human warships uncloaked from hidden positions within the nebula. They had been waiting inside the gas clouds, using the nebula's interference to hide their presence. Psylocke's eyes widened. What? Where did they come from? The human fleet opened fire. Precision strikes disabled Zorvath shields. EMP waves scrambled their targeting systems. Human fighters swarmed like locusts, striking at key weak points. The trap had been reversed. Zorvath ships fell one by one, confusion and panic spreading through their ranks. The humans were supposed to be the ones surrounded. Yet now the Zorvath found themselves unable to escape. Psylocke roared in fury. "Retreat. Regroup outside the nebula." But Monroe had anticipated this. As the Zorvath tried to escape, the human fleet had already positioned blockade ships at the nebula's edge. The moment the first Zorvath ships emerged, they were met with heavy fire. There was no way out. On the command deck of the Horizon, Monroe watched as the Zorvath fleet fell apart. He sighed, folding his hands behind his back. "They never learn," he murmured. By the time the battle ended, the once mighty Zorvath fleet had been shattered. Psylocke's ship, damaged beyond repair, barely managed to escape. His name, once feared across the stars, was now whispered in disgrace. And across the galaxy, one truth became clear. The humans were not prey. They were hunters. The Zorvath Dominion had never suffered such a defeat. The loss at Revok Nebula sent shockwaves through the Empire. High generals argued in secret chambers, politicians whispered in fear, and the once mighty fleets of the Dominion hesitated for the first time in history. But no one felt the shame more than Xylox. He sat in the war chamber, his claws gripping the metal armrests of his chair. His personal guards stood at attention, their red armor gleaming under the cold lights. Across the table sat Supreme Chancellor Vorton, leader of the Zorvath Dominion. Vorton was old, his scales a dull shade of green, but his eyes burned with power. He had ruled for over a century, leading the Dominion to countless victories. Now he looked at Xylox with pure disappointment. "You told me the humans were weak," Vorton said, his voice slow and sharp like a dagger. Xylox clenched his jaw. "They fight dishonorably. They use deception and—" "They won," Vorton interrupted, his voice rising. "That is all that matters. The Dominion does not lose. Yet here we are." Silence filled the room. Xylox could feel the eyes of the other warlords on him. They wanted him to fall. They wanted to take his place. Vorton leaned forward. "You have one chance to redeem yourself, Xylox. One final battle. If you fail, you will not return." Xylox stood, pounding his fist against his chest in a warrior's salute. "I will not fail, Chancellor. I will bring you the heads of the human commanders." Vorton smirked. "Then go. And make sure the galaxy remembers why the Dominion is feared." Deep in space, aboard the Horizon, Admiral Monroe studied the latest intelligence reports. He knew the Zorvath wouldn't accept defeat so easily. If they were quiet now, it was because they were preparing for something big. Maya Wren entered the command room, carrying a datapad. "We intercepted Zorvath communications," she said, setting the pad on the table. A hologram flickered to life, displaying intercepted messages. Monroe watched the screen. The messages were fragmented, but a few words stood out. "Final offensive. Earth. Total annihilation." Monroe's breath slowed. He had expected a counterattack, but this was more than revenge. The Zorvath weren't planning to reclaim their honor. They were planning to erase humanity from existence. "They're going for Earth," Monroe murmured. Maya nodded grimly. "We don't have enough ships to stop them. The Dominion still has one of the largest fleets in the galaxy. If they send everything they have, Earth won't stand a chance." Monroe's fingers tightened into a fist. "Then we don't let them reach Earth." Maya frowned. "But how? Their fleet is too big for us to fight head-on." Monroe turned to the large star map. His mind raced through possibilities, discarding one after another. Then he saw it, a single point of weakness. "They'll have to pass through the Harkon corridor," he said. "It's the only stable path to Sol. If we strike there, we can force them into a battle on our terms." Maya hesitated. "But that's a narrow space. Our fleet won't be able to maneuver easily either." Monroe smiled. "That's exactly what we need." In the darkness of space, the largest Zorvath fleet ever assembled moved toward Earth. Thousands of warships stretching across the void like a sea of death. At the front of the armada sat Xylox, his crimson eyes burning with fury. "This time," he muttered, "there will be no escape." But as they neared the Harkon corridor, something unexpected happened. The human fleet appeared, not in retreat, but waiting. Xylox frowned. "They're standing their ground." He expected them to run, to try and defend Earth directly. Instead, they had chosen to fight here, at the corridor. "Arrogant," he growled. "They think they can stop us with this pathetic force." His second in command, a scared warrior named Korvik, looked uncertain. "Sir, the humans do not fight conventionally. This could be another trap." Xylox sneered. "It doesn't matter what tricks they try. They are outnumbered, overwhelmed. This battle will be their last." He raised his arm. "Advance. Crush them." The Zorvath fleet surged forward, Weapons primed. Plasma cannons charged. Missile systems locked on. Then, the entire corridor exploded. A shockwave tore through space as hidden human charges detonated across the battlefield. Enormous asteroids, rigged with explosives, shattered into massive debris fields, turning the battlefield into a death trap. Zorvath warships collided, their formations crumbling. Navigation systems failed. Ships lost control, spinning into wreckage, slamming into one another in fiery explosions. Psylocke's eyes widened in horror. What is this? Then the human fleet attacked. They moved in coordinated strikes, hitting the weakest points of the Zorvath ships. Precision, not power. Strategy, not brute force. It wasn't a battle. It was slaughter. One by one, the mighty Zorvath warships fell. Their overwhelming numbers meant nothing in the chaos of the debris field. The Dominion had stepped into a battlefield where their size was a weakness, not a strength. Psylocke's command ship shook violently as explosions rocked the hull. Sparks rained down from the ceiling. Warnings blared through the bridge. "No," he snarled, gripping the control panel. "I will not lose to them again." But then, a voice came through the communication channel. "General Psylocke," Admiral Monroe said calmly, "this is the second time I've beaten you. There won't be a third." Before Psylocke could reply, Monroe gave the final order. "All ships, fire." A barrage of human weapons tore through Psylocke's flagship. The mighty warship, once a symbol of Dominion strength, exploded in a bright, burning fireball. The remaining Zorvath forces, seeing their leader fall, broke. Some tried to flee. Others surrendered. But the battle was already over. The Dominion had lost. Humanity had won. And across the galaxy, one message was clear. The age of Zorvath rule was over. The once mighty Zorvath Dominion was crumbling. Their fleets, once feared across the stars, were shattered. Their warlords, once arrogant and proud, were either dead or in hiding. Their empire, built on centuries of conquest, was now a fading shadow of its former self. But the war was not over. Even with their defeat at the Harkon Corridor, some Zorvath forces refused to surrender. Scattered fleets operated in secret, striking at human supply lines, raiding colonies, and ambushing patrol ships. These remnants clung to the old ways, unwilling to accept that their time of dominance was over. And among them, one name still commanded respect: Torvik. Once the second in command to General Psylocke, Torvik had barely escaped the destruction of the Zorvath flagship. He had watched his leader fall, had seen his people routed by the very species they once laughed at. Now, deep within a hidden Zorvath stronghold, Torvik stood before a gathering of surviving warlords. His body was scared, his eyes filled with hatred. Around him, the chamber echoed with the voices of commanders desperate for revenge. "The Dominion is not dead," Torvik roared. "We still have fleets, warriors, and weapons. The humans think they have won, but we will strike from the shadows. We will make them fear us again." The warlords murmured, some nodding in agreement, others looking doubtful. One of them, a veteran named Karthok, narrowed his eyes. "You speak of war, but with what army? Our fleets are broken. Our homeworlds are under siege. The Dominion is dying, Torvik." Torvik's claws dug into the stone table. "Then let it die," he growled. "Let the old Dominion rot. We don't need an empire. We need vengeance. We will become something else, something greater. We will not rule from thrones. We will strike from the darkness." He gestured to a holographic display, showing human trade routes, military bases, and supply chains. "We don't need to defeat them in open war. We will make them bleed." The warlords looked at each other. Slowly, Karthok nodded. "Then let the galaxy burn," he said. On Earth, celebrations filled the streets. The fall of the Zorvath Dominion was the greatest victory in human history. The war that had once seemed hopeless had ended in triumph. Cities held parades, banners waved in the wind, and for the first time in years, Humanity felt safe. But Admiral Monroe did not celebrate. Inside a high-security war room beneath the United Earth Defense Headquarters, he stood before a council of military leaders and government officials. The mood here was not one of celebration, but of concern. "The war is not over," Monroe said, his voice calm but firm. "The Dominion may have fallen, but the Zorvath are not finished." A senator frowned. "We have reports of isolated Zorvath attacks, yes, but these are desperate remnants, not a real threat." Monroe turned to Maya Wren, who stood beside him. She pressed a button on her datapad, and a holographic display appeared, showing recent human losses. Supply ships disappearing. Colonies attacked in the dead of night. Entire outposts wiped out. "This is not desperation," Maya said. "This is organized. The Zorvath are no longer fighting as an empire. They're fighting as insurgents." Murmurs filled the room. The war was supposed to be over. The idea of a new, unseen enemy was unsettling. A general leaned forward. "What are they after?" Monroe exhaled slowly. "They don't want territory anymore. They don't want control. They want revenge." Silence. Then the senator spoke again. "So what do we do?" Monroe looked at the star map, tracing the recent attacks. "We hunt them," he said. "We don't wait for them to come to us. We take the fight to them. We end this before it truly begins." The room was quiet, but there was no disagreement. The war was entering a new phase, one that would be fought not in grand battles, but in shadows. And Monroe knew one thing for certain. The Zorvath were wounded. But wounded predators were often the most dangerous of all. The silence of deep space was an illusion. Beyond the cold, empty void, something stirred. Hidden warships, unseen movements, whispers of conflict in the darkness. Humanity had won the war, but they had not won peace. The Zorvath were no longer conquerors. They were something far worse. They had become ghosts. Admiral Monroe stood on the bridge of the horizon, watching the vastness of space through the reinforced viewport. It had been months since the last official battle, but the fighting had not stopped. The Zorvath remnants had adapted. They no longer fought in open combat, no longer sent great fleets to challenge human warships. Instead, they struck where it hurt the most: supply lines, communication relays, distant colonies, and they never left survivors. Maya Wren approached, her face grim. "Another attack," she said, handing him a datapad. Monroe glanced at the report. A transport ship had gone silent on its way to the Vega system. No distress signal, no wreckage, just gone. "They're getting bolder," Monroe muttered. Maya nodded. "And smarter. We increased patrols along major routes, so now they're targeting the less traveled ones." Monroe's jaw tightened. "We need to find them before they strike again." But that was the problem. The Zorvath were no longer an empire with fleets and bases. They were a network moving through the cracks of the galaxy, striking from the shadows. And their leader, Torvik, had turned them into something new, something terrifying. Maya's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "We intercepted a message," she said. "It was encrypted, but our analysts cracked part of it." She pressed a button, and the screen flickered to life. A distorted voice spoke in the Zorvath tongue. But the translation was clear. "The humans believe they have won. We will remind them of their mistake. The hammer falls soon." Monroe's stomach twisted. "What does the hammer mean?" he asked. Maya shook her head. "We don't know, but whatever it is, it's coming." Torvik stood in the shadows of a ruined space station, deep in the uncharted sectors of space. His warriors knelt before him, their armor darkened, their eyes filled with fury. "Humanity grows complacent," Torvik said, his voice low but powerful. "They celebrate. They believe the war is over." A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd, bitter, sharp. "They do not understand that this is only the beginning," Torvik continued. "They think we strike at their trade routes because we are weak. They think we hide because we are afraid." He took a step forward, claws glinting in the dim light. But we do not hide. We prepare. He turned to a holographic display, one that showed Earth. Our empire may be gone, but we still have one final strike to deliver. One blow that will break their spirit forever. A younger Zorvath warrior stepped forward. Are we truly ready? Torvik smiled. We are. And soon, the humans will learn. Victory was never theirs to keep. The warriors pounded their fists against their chests in unison. The hammer was about to fall. The attack came without warning. Earth's defense grid, the most advanced in human history, detected nothing. No ships, no signals, no threats. Then, in an instant, chaos erupted. Explosions tore through orbital stations, communications arrays went silent, and Earth's skies were filled with falling debris. The attack was precise, devastating, designed not to conquer, but to cripple. The Zorvath's final strike had begun. Admiral Monroe barely had time to react. One moment, the command center was quiet. The next, alarms blared, and urgent voices filled the room. Multiple detonations in high orbit. We've lost contact with Luna Base. Enemy forces detected. No, they were already here. Monroe's mind raced. This wasn't an invasion. The Zorvath hadn't sent a fleet. They had hidden within humanity's own infrastructure, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Sabotage. Terror. Maya Wren's face was pale as she scanned the incoming data. Sir, Earth's defense satellites are failing one by one. Monroe clenched his fists. How did they get past our security? Then it hit him. They hadn't. The Zorvath never left. In the final days of the war, when the Dominion fell, countless prisoners had been taken. Zorvath soldiers, engineers, workers, many were integrated into labor forces, research stations, and even planetary security projects. Torvik's forces had hidden inside humanity itself. They had spent months waiting, planting explosives, corrupting systems, and positioning their agents. And now, the trap had been sprung. Maya's voice pulled him back. We have reports of coordinated ground attacks, multiple cities. They're not just hitting our defenses, they're hitting civilians. Monroe's stomach twisted. This wasn't war. This was annihilation. He slammed his fist on the console. Get me a direct line to all defense forces. Tell them to secure the cities and hold the skies. We stop this. Now, on the streets of New London, chaos reigned. Zorvath warriors, disguised as civilians, had revealed themselves in a storm of violence. They detonated bombs in crowded districts, sabotaged power grids, and turned human weapons against their own people. Panic spread like wildfire. Captain Elias Carter led a squad of soldiers through the burning streets, dodging sniper fire as they moved toward the central command bunker. Civilians screamed, running in every direction. His radio crackled. Carter, this is command. You need to secure the data vaults. If they breach them, they'll wipe our entire defense network. Carter gritted his teeth. Copy that. Moving in. His squad pushed forward, cutting through the enemy. But this wasn't like the battles they had fought before. The Zorvath weren't here to win. They were here to die, taking humanity with them. Torvik watched from a hidden command post, satisfaction gleaming in his crimson eyes. The humans were scrambling, just as he planned. They had believed the war was over. They had allowed themselves to become comfortable. And now, their homeworld burned. A younger warrior approached. We have reports of resistance. The humans are regrouping. Torvik exhaled slowly. Of course they are. Humanity had proven itself resourceful, stubborn, dangerous. But it didn't matter. This wasn't about victory anymore. This was about revenge. On the horizon, Monroe watched the battle unfold in real time. Earth was on fire, but humanity was fighting back. He took a deep breath. There was no time for hesitation. Order all fleets to converge on Earth, he commanded. Deploy counterintelligence teams. We need to cut off their network. Maya looked at him, and Torvik. Monroe's gaze hardened. We find him. And we end this for good. The final battle for humanity's survival had begun.